I just didn't even know like what to expect going into it. And I was very afraid of putting myself out there and asking people if they would join me in that and if they would contribute financially. God just did a lot of work in my heart and showed me that it's really not about me and what I can do or what other people can do, but what he can do, and that he exceeds all of my expectations and can do abundantly more than all that we can ask or imagine.
So we are asking today, is fundraising doable? And the reason why we're putting on this event is because we understand that when you're heading into full-time ministry or missionary work, and you're thinking about this option of if you are to fundraise, it can bring up a lot of emotions of, excited emotions, but also some fear and trepidation. It can also bring up emotions for other people in your life, possibly your friends or your family. And so I think it's good to really think about what does the Bible say about fundraising, and also how we can how we inform those emotions that we have towards fundraising. So we, as an organization at GoCore, we want to help you in that. And so we are putting on this event to give you some answers to some questions that may come up as you're thinking of the possibility of fundraising. So I have fundraised myself. I'm an alumni of the program. I felt a lot of feelings. And so I think it's really helpful to hear from people who have done it themselves. So today we have 3 awesome people who are just recently entering out of the fundraising process, which is probably a wonderful, exciting thing to be able to hear that. So I will have our 3 panelists introduce themselves. So why don't you guys say your name, maybe what your major was in college, and say what you're doing in just a little bit, tiny snippet as to why you chose to do this post-grad.
Well, I can go first. So my name is Naomi. I studied elementary education at Grand Canyon University. And I chose to pursue GoCore and working overseas after college. I feel like this has always been something that's been on my heart. And so GoCore really gave us direction as to how to do that and how to do that well. So yeah, I absolutely have loved it.
Yeah, my name is Shaunica. I am from Mississippi, and I was an engineering student. And I am going to Southeast Asia. I did not have any idea that that's where I would end up, but I always wanted to just use my education and degree to empower others and create economic opportunity. And so I'm getting to do that through GoCore.
I'm Aaron. I studied mechanical engineering at George Fox University. So we're all actually going to the same location in Southeast Asia, which is exciting. The reason I want to do this and how I got connected, I've wanted to my whole life. I actually was a missionary kid for 18 years in East Africa. And it's been on my heart to use the opportunity that I have been given to help others find opportunities who have not been given.
So yeah, that answers the question as to why you guys are all together, because you guys are kind of in a bit of a training season together. So it's fun to have you all here in the same Zoom screen. So I'll just start off with a pretty, tangible question where we can get a picture as to what fundraising looks like. So what does day-to-day, week-to-week look like with fundraising? Maybe a couple of you guys can answer that.
Sure, yeah. So for me, day-to-day was not the same every day. I tried to be kind of flexible with the people that I was meeting with. And so sometimes that meant meeting someone really early in the morning before they went to work. And if so, then I might meet with them and then have my quiet time with God. And then, so every day was just a mixture of having meetings with potential partners, spending time in the Word, in prayer, setting up new meetings, and following up with people who I had met with to, see if they wanted to join my team or not. So I think those were the main 4 things I was doing. And
it was a lot of just balancing and juggling, meeting with people, following up with people, reaching out to people to set up new things. And then also just administrative stuff. So getting done what needs to get done.
It changed every day. I would just reiterate that. Another thing I did during the process is just like on weekends, taking a day off to not do anything, to relax and to rest. And that allows you to continue at the really fast pace and a very dynamic work.
That's awesome. Yeah. If you're wondering why these three people just all had it down, this awesome schedule, it's because they went to our training that we offer. So all of them were at the same training. GoCore offers a fundraising training to every goer. That's a week in Minneapolis that gives you every tool that you need to successfully fundraise. And a huge tool is to figure out how to set up a weekly schedule. But you guys did a great job explaining that. Naomi, what were some expectations or fears walking into the fundraising process, and how did that change throughout the journey of fundraising?
Yeah, so to be honest, going into it, I was told like expect it to not go as planned. And so I just didn't even know like what to expect going into it. And I was very afraid of putting myself out there and asking people if they would join me in that and if they would contribute financially. And so, yeah, just had a ton of fears and doubts around that. But as I went through training and read the book that you guys gave us, and yeah, God just did a lot of work in my heart and showed me that it's really not about me and what I can do or what other people can do, but what He can do, and that He exceeds all of my expectations and can do abundantly more than all that we can ask or imagine. And so, yeah, just clinging to that throughout that season. And I did see Him come through and surprise me in so many different ways. So, yeah, it was a very sweet season of God just showing me His provision, His love, His power. That in short.
That's awesome. What about for you, Shaunica and RN? Did you guys have specific expectations walking in, and what did it kind of look like throughout the journey?
Yeah, stepping into it, I think one of my biggest fears was there not being enough money, resources in my circle to actually get to my goal. And so that was something I was worried about going into it. And as I was actually like going through the process of fundraising, I was just like over and over again blown away by people's generosity, by God's provision. And also like so many of the people that ended up supporting me were not people I even knew. I think I calculated like 15 to 20% of my support is from people that I had never even met before. And a lot of them were from my church. And I just got connected to them through my pastor and referrals. And so, yeah, that was an expectation that God just really showed up and like met, and I was blown away.
Going into it, I had a lot of fear just of failure. Like, what if I don't actually like get all the money that I need to get? And a fear of asking people for money. I've worked for 3 years as an engineer before setting up with GoCore, and so I'm used to receiving money for what I do. Like asking money is something I never. So some fear initially, but then once I started, you start with like all the people that you know really well, that you love, and I was just like overjoyed by. They were so gracious, and they were like, "Of course we want to support you," and like all the stuff was coming in, and I was like, "Wow." So yeah, super encouraging. After kind of just jumping into it and getting into it, along with those feelings of doubt and fear.
I think you guys are all getting at a lot of fears that are initially right off the bat for a lot of goers. I know that in my fundraising experience, I had a huge fear of what people would think when I sat down with them and we had this established relationship, and then I brought money into the picture, you know, but I found that not only were so many people so excited, like the majority of people that I asked were like saying yes, but so excited to give to me. But also I learned that the Lord was inviting me so much into letting go of this like idol of what people think of me and what people think of maybe this next step that is really countercultural to what they were thinking, especially my like family were just like, I don't get what you're doing. So it was a lot of letting go for me alongside of those fears. So for you all, what are some things that you think you had to let go of during the fundraising process?
A lot of things. One was the scarcity mindset that like there wasn't enough, like that I just wouldn't receive what I needed. So that was really hard, but good to work through. Another thing I had to let go of was this idea that I could do it on my own. I've always been very independent and want to just like do things myself and be able to do what I want to do. And so it was very vulnerable to ask and be like, this is what I'm doing and I cannot do this on my own. And so I'm asking you, will you join me in this work? And so it was vulnerable in connecting with community, but it was also vulnerable with God. Like, God, do I really trust that you're going to do this and that you will provide? And so, yeah, just letting go of the idea that I can do this on my own because I can't. And it's so much more beautiful to get to do it with people and to fully rely on God and allow him to play that role in our life.
Yeah, for me, it was pretty similar. I think I had to realize that I can't, like, it's not up to me to get the supporters on my team, that it wasn't up to me convincing anyone or speaking well or, you know, putting together a really convincing argument. Like, it really, at the end of the day, I had to let go of that idea and recognize that it really is God working in people's hearts and preparing them. And he's orchestrating everything ahead of time. Before you even start, he's already worked everything out. And so just recognizing that all I was doing was obediently walking into those meetings and putting it out there. And, you know, if that was someone that God had prepared to be, you know, on my team, then it was going to work out. And if not, it wouldn't. And it really wasn't up to me, which was something I had to let go of. But once I did, it was so freeing.
Yeah. And it's also so cool to see how God is working with you. Like, you're not doing this on your own. It's not only what you can do, but it's like God is working on your behalf with you. Yes, there's effort required on our side, but he's working with you and he knows who your community is. He knows who's going to say yes and who's going to say no because he's already putting that all together. So, yeah.
I think one of the biggest things also very similar is just letting go of control. I'm like, I have to do this just right. I have to do these specific things. And trusting. And like, I feel called to the location that I'm going to. And so in the middle of it, when you're working hard for like 50 hours a week, meeting with like so many people and there's no money coming in, it's like, oh my gosh, is this actually going to happen? There's all this doubt. But yeah, letting go of that and saying, I trust despite the circumstances. And another thing to let go of is pride as well. Like, I love to be able to be independent, be like, yeah, I can make it on my own, good American. But like letting go of that, being like, actually, now my provision comes from like the gratefulness of other people and from God. Yeah.
That's good. You guys are just throwing out some great gold nuggets there. Love it. Shaunica, you mentioned that, which I think this is probably surprising to some people who are listening to this, that you have supporters that are on your team that you've never met before, which is crazy, which, you know, probably you mentioned like came through referrals and some people from your church that you haven't met. So that's like a huge surprise. I had that in my own experience. Another surprise I had in my experience is like so many of my college friends who just are getting these jobs are being so generous because they were really with me through those years, seeing the Lord really inviting me into this, you know, calling or invitation, whatever you want to call it. And so, you know, what I thought was just going to be this little donation, they like are some of my top supporters, which is really cool. So yeah, are there any other like surprises that came either from, you know, financial surprises or just like the way the Lord supported you within your fundraising experience?
Yeah, I was just constantly surprised. Like, one thing that GoCore told us as we entered into fundraising is expect it to come from the least expected people. Like the people that you think will give most likely won't give at the level that you think that they could or would. But then also like I definitely entered these where I was like, I know like their financial situation isn't great. And so like I don't feel comfortable asking them. And then they are like some of my top supporters. And it's just crazy to see how God moves so generously and freely through people, and also just so many surprises. It was really sweet to experience.
So just coming into this whole situation, having worked as an engineer for a number of years and being like, I'm never going to fundraise. I hate the idea of doing this. And coming out of it being like, I actually think this is a really good thing. I think this was really good for me to do. And I think that it's like really glorifying to God. Biblical. And so I actually like tell people, yeah, I love fundraising and what it does for me of like creating accountability and developing all these relationships with all kinds of people. I know way more people in my church than I did before going into fundraising, and have like cool, deep connections with them. That was definitely like a really, really pleasant surprise.
Yeah. I think a takeaway from like all of this is it's not about the money. It's not about like there's so much more that God has provided than just money. Like the community that I've received from going through fundraising, the stuff that the Lord has taught me and like worked through in my heart because of fundraising is so just like precious. And yeah, I am glad that I did it.
Yeah. Another surprise that I experienced was that when I was resting, that was like when a lot of the support actually came through. And so, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about just like, it really wasn't up to me, and it was God doing that, and honoring my obedience. But yeah, it was crazy because I was like, I would be working so hard, and it was something I probably could have done a lot better was rest. But when I did, that was when God just really showed up and provided abundantly. And I think a lot of us had that experience. So that was another pleasant surprise.
That's awesome. Yeah, it just seems like the Lord is really inviting us into rest constantly, even in the times when we really don't want to rest or we feel like we can't rest. I actually was going to kind of talk about that because Aaron, you mentioned that too, like having once a week having sort of like a time to rest or Sabbath. So kind of on the opposite end, like the need for rest. What's like the hardest part of fundraising? Why is that rest needed? So what's on the other end of fundraising? Like what were kind of the hard? You're mentioning a lot of things, but is there anything else that you would add to like harder aspects of fundraising and why they're hard?
There were definitely a lot of times when it was just so discouraging to be met with people who were skeptical or couldn't see or get behind like what you were doing. And sometimes that's family members. Sometimes that's your close friends, like people that you value and trust and love. And so that is really, really hard and discouraging. And so, yeah, just to learn that if this is what the Lord is calling you into, that He will provide, even if relationships look different. That was one of the hardest things for me, I think.
Yeah, a hard thing for me was when I already mentioned like a long period of time where there wasn't a lot of money coming in. I'm an engineer, so I love my spreadsheets and just tracking that and like making sure I'm on track. And yeah, there were times when I'm just working my butt off and there's encouraging conversations happening, during the week and a lot of positive things, but I just like don't see the numbers moving at all. And I'm like, the deadline is approaching. Yeah, that was definitely hard.
Yeah, I think for me, the hardest thing was having consistent time with with people that was outside of like support raising meetings. It doesn't have to be this way. I think this is one of those things I look back on. It's like I could have, tried to schedule fewer meetings and then actually had time for other people. But I'm an introvert, and so having all of my support raising meetings during the week, I was like, my social capacity was just maxed out, and then I didn't want to talk to anybody else. And so that was hard because I wasn't having consistent time with anyone. Besides my cohort with GoCore, which was good, weekly time to kind of share how we were all doing. And we had a group chat with all the goers, which was also really encouraging.
Everyone was throwing out their like encouragement.
Yeah.
They're like, guys, I'm struggling in this. Can you please pray? Or like, we have this big meeting coming up. Like, please. That was, we were all in it together. So that's another thing. Like, you're not alone in what you're walking through.
Very cool.
Oh, you're good. I said.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the introvert thing, because I think like a common misconception is like, well, fundraising is not as doable for introverts or something because you have to be a people person or whatever, which introverts are still people persons. I'm an introvert, so I can say that. But I'm glad you brought that up. Doable for all people. We have a question from our attendees. How was it to meet with someone who was not a Christian?
Sure. Yeah. I had a couple meetings with some non-Christian friends. And actually I can think of two that went very different directions. So, one of them was not great. They didn't respond very enthusiastically to what I was sharing, and that was okay. I mean, it was an uncomfortable meeting, but I felt like I was supposed to share with them, and now they still, receive my newsletter, and they can still keep up with what I'm doing, and that can be even in itself a ministry. Another meeting I had with a non-Christian actually went super well, and she's one of my supporters. So yeah, and she was super supportive of like the work that I will be doing, because it, with GoCore, with doing engineering work, I'm not only, going and being a missionary, but we're actually also doing work that's going to tangibly affect people physically and economically. And so that's something that people can get behind, and you might shape the way that you approach, talking about that a little differently, but that's a really cool opportunity to share.
Yeah. Another thing that we were encouraging is like, we had to make a list of people that we reach out to, and like, don't be afraid to have people on that list who are not Christian, because this in and of itself, fundraising is a part of your ministry. Like, you get to share with them, you get to, like your relationship with them and what you share with them, like ministry starts now. It's not just once you're fully funded and you're overseas, like it's now. And so that I got to meet with a couple of non-Christians as well. And so it was just so cool to get to share my heart and like hear from them and hear their questions. Sparked some really neat conversations that otherwise I would not have had with those people. And so, we can't control how they respond ultimately, but it was really cool to get to do that.
Yeah, I think it's, like you guys have both said, a great opportunity to share your faith with people. And it is sometimes kind of uncomfortable. I got to talk with one guy who is like learning about faith, and we've been talking together about things for a long time. He became a supporter of mine, which is awesome. And we're continuing to talk about stuff. And he's like moving toward that direction of having a faith, believing, which is super exciting. So it's like, great, here's a ministry opportunity for non-Christians as well as Christians. It's a huge ministry opportunity for Christians as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was just talking to a student today who's looking into applying for GoCore, and she's like, when will my ministry start? And I was like, well, you'll get to the field around this time, but your ministry does start in fundraising. So that's cool. In your time in fundraising, you are fundraising for some one-time costs, but a lot of monthly support so that you can really live well overseas. So like fundraising for your housing and transportation and all that kind of, groceries, good living stuff. So that can end up being a lot of money because you're really getting yourself all prepared for 2 years so that you can have that done and be set for 2 years. So kind of just another tangible question. How long did you guys take to fully get funded?
Shaunica finished first.
Yeah.
Out of us.
7 weeks is all that it took for me.
Yeah, mine was like 9 weeks, and I met with over 100 people.
Yeah.
9 weeks, yeah.
So we have the whole spectrum here. For me, it took until the deadline. It took me 3 months. I met with like 120 something people. Long, very long process. But yeah, it was a good process also. I think it's exactly what I needed to inspire faith in me, to trust when I don't see it.
Mm-hmm. And you say very long, but like most organizations take like
a year,
Yeah,
2
for
years.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like very, very fast for all of us. Like
Yeah.
the fact that we met that goal. So yeah, it's doable, guys.
for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say 3 months is still pretty short. The fundraising process of 3 months is, it feels like a long time, but it really isn't that long. But RN, I remember the different moments where you were like, I got this much, this is so exciting. And then the weeks you'd come and you'd be like, nothing is happening.
Yep.
So it is really cool to see how each person has God has just a different plan for each person. And it's really to like shine a light on, some really great things, some things we need to work on. I feel like the Lord just really has, that's something that we talk about a lot at Go Week. Like, don't compare your timelines or anything to other people, because there is a specific purpose. Like maybe if you fundraise really quickly, RN, like you wouldn't have had that meeting with that guy that you're talking, a lot to about the faith and stuff. So there is definitely bigger and better purposes that the Lord has for us in those timelines than we want it to be done in 2 weeks. That would just be a magical thing. But sometimes that's not the way that God has things planned for us. Yeah. Well, you guys shared so many wonderful things. I think you gave a really cool full picture as to what fundraising looks like and what are the hard things, but what are the ways that the Lord really does continue to show up in it. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you to you who are watching and listening. And I hope that this was helpful, and feel free to check in with GoCore for more events as we try to send out 20-somethings to use their degree overseas on the mission field.